Last time on Yu-Gi-Oh! CG, we cracked open Volume 3 with the introduction of effect monsters and the rise of the low-axis beatdown deck. As we enter July, the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Certainly feels real, as Duelists received in the mail invitations for the upcoming Duelist Legend in Tokyo Dome tournament. The event would be held in late August, so this gave Duelists plenty of time to involve themselves in the game. One such involvement was that the tournament rules included the first ever limited list, where you could only have one copy of the following cards per deck: Dark Hole, Raigeki, and Trap Hole. Hitting the back row staples was no joke, as now monster removal was severely, limited, aside from Fissure. And this event would be played via the card game, unlike the national tournament back in February. Although the confusing part was that it was unclear if this list was specifically for the tournament or if it was a widespread rule moving forward. However, Duelists still played with the Phantom list in July to, at the very least, prepare for the event. So from here on out, I will be using the July list in deck construction. Also in early July was the second booster set in Booster 3, more gacha games, yay. This was a big set, for it included the first effect monsters that didn't need to be flipped for their effects to activate. The main one people glanced at was Hourglass of Courage, that starts with half attack and can double its attack during your following turn's end phase for a strong 2200 attack, a stat that can beat Curse of Dragon and Giant Soldier of Stone. While its effect is alluring, it ultimately left a lot to be desired. Surviving one turn was difficult enough, aside from Swords of Revealing Light, but it's still an investment when compared to general beaters, let alone the fact that Hourglass needs to wait multiple turns to actually see use. It's a high-risk type of card that was more of a joke than actually useful. And that was the best of the bunch. Your good effect monsters were still Maneater Bug, Skelengel, and Hane. Solid monsters otherwise were Great White and Beautiful Headhuntress. These two, alongside Rogue Doll, changed the baseline low axis beater stat to 1600. While Mystic Clown was released here too with a generally decent 1500 attack stat, it was just barely late to the party. 1500 beaters just weren't as viable anymore now that you have 9 options unless you were geared toward a specific equip strategy. Not even mentioning that if you were hard-pressed for a few more beaters, Skull Red Bird existed, in which technically the mountain strategy gained strength with Takuhi, which could get up to 1650, and Curse could get buffed too. In that same regard, Beautiful Headhuntress and Giant Flea / Great White and Takraminos had Invigoration and Steel Shell synergy respectively, but I digress. Booster 3 was also known for its large number of new traps. Reverse Trap was to counter the equip strategy as it changed the stat gains. This would be good if not for 3 reasons. 1 being that the 1600 beatdown build was becoming popular. 2, low axis and flip axis decks were becoming one homogenized entity, and as such equipped decks still had a tough time with the bug being a certified staple at this point. And 3, a new powerful trap card arrived called Reinforcements, or should I use its Japanese name, Reinforcements of the Army? This trap gave any monster a 500 attack boost for a turn, which meant that weaker monsters like Stone can beat over Doll, and Doll can beat over Curse. This can be used with any monster at the time, barring the initial set. Castle Walls? Nah, you were looking for reinforcements from the card-ass machines. Last but not least from the power cards of Booster 3 was Ultimate's Offering, or known in the OCG as Price of Blood. Pay 500 life points to normal summon an additional monster, an effect that was probably designed to make tribute summoning easier. Us TCG folk may be familiar with it and its confusing rulings. I've made a video on its OCG absurdity in the past, but going over it again, like many card effects at the time, the OCG text was ambiguous. Some people in some regions thought you could normal summon high-class monsters by paying 500. Some places even thought fusions met this criteria too. Gaia, anyone? Remember, in 1999, the internet wasn't that widespread. It wasn't uncommon for even books to include misinformation. What is there to judge a ruling on? Cards like Fissure hitting face-down cards or Raigeki hitting all monsters in the deck are some examples of this ambiguity. As such, certain areas in Japan saw way more play with Yugioh than others. One deck to summon another Rogue Doll versus a deck to summon a Blue Eyes from hand is not the same ideology at all. One last fun bit of trivia is the new card Jormungand. Despite looking like a water monster, it is based on a sea serpent in Norse mythology called Jormungandr that encircled the earth, and thus it's an earth monster. The more you know. The format was not defined by a singular set, as only a few days later, on July 8th, we saw the release of Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monster 2, Dark Duel Stories. Each copy of this game contained 3 of 10 promotional cards. Since these were random and the game was pricey as is, you most likely need to get the singular cards at card shops, in which they tended to be pricier than others. And you should pay the relatively high price since some of these cards are indeed powerful. The strongest of the bunch was Kunai with Chain. It has shades of reinforcements with the additional effect of changing an attack monster into defense position, in which many beaters had low defense. Once again, we had a trap that threw away the idea of attribute-specific builds over general attack boosts. It also gave you the element of surprise, and now the opponent is more wary of what lurks beneath. Another notable card is Crush Card Virus. Yeah, it was released this early. While its widespread powerful monster removal is nothing to scoff at, the game at this point lacked any playable weak dark monsters. Remember, this wasn't Booster 1 with Ryukushin anymore. Some Cardpool drawbacks was with the new Harpy's Feather Duster, a Raigeki for the back row. Trap Hole was just Phantom Limited, so the only real targets were the Gotcha Machine reinforcements, the rare-to-see Kunai, and Swords of Revealing Light didn't stay on the field. As such, Virus and Duster didn't see much play on release. Then we have Perfectly Ultimate Great Moth, yeah, before the original. The first monster with a special summon clause barring fusion summoning. This card was hard to summon. Impossible even, considering neither Cocoon nor Petite Moth existed. If you didn't know the manga, you'd be very confused. But if you're in the area where Price of Blood decks existed at max capacity, then Moth would be perfect as a monster to summon with Yugioh, since Yugioh mentions that you can summon separately from normal summons, and since Moth has no way to summon it otherwise, Yugioh makes it so that it can be summoned. Scary Terry. And if you're enjoying this video, then make sure to support me via Patreon, because $2 a month is way more than if this video got 1,000 views. Definitely check that out to support the channel and ensure the longevity of the Janjo Zone moving forward. Thank you, thank you. Speaking of unusable cards, Cyber Shield can only be equipped to the non-existent Harpy's Lady or Harpy's Lady's sisters. What even? There would be more equip magic that pushed the boundaries to what even the attribute-based ones could do. Insect Armor with Laser Cannon, Salamandra, and Shine Palace all increase attack by 700 points. This was great in comparison, if not limited by select types and attributes in the current climate. Shine Palace was the best of the bunch due to Rogue Doll, or even in the Yugioh environment with a Light Blood deck with Blue Eyes and the new promo Seiryu. The last promo is Acid Trap Hole, which takes care of wall monsters, an issue that Kunai with 1600s were already solving. Technically speaking, there were 2 game guides for Dark Duel Stories that included promos, but they were these 2 weird ARM cards that have no use aside from a crush card target. The card pool added a lot of new, useful cards, and deck construction was amplified by the limited list. With just 3 cards hit, you now had 6 free slots for deck construction, so theoretically equip/field decks could make space for rogue play. I say rogue since reinforcements and Kunai both made the once alternate strategy more of an uphill climb to play, especially with Duster now existing. The combination of flips and beaters were clearly top dog, and as such, it created the umbrella concept of good stuff. Otherwise, you had the kind of not legal blood price of the highest order deck, which created an entirely different metagame depending on where you lived. Yugioh wouldn't get an official clarity until the EX Starter Box rulebook in December. Booster 3 and the Dark Duel Story promo cards all contain randomness pickup cards and rely more on card shops. On top of that, cards like Yugioh, Moth, and Cyber Shield did nothing but confuse people. I'm sure printing more equip-focused cards such as Reverse Trap and Salamandra made duelists question what Konami truly wanted to push, equips or beaters, because it seemed to be both, with one side clearly being more consistent than the other, especially as more cards get printed. All that said, Yu-Gi-Oh! Was ultimately more interactive, and you can see this period as where strategies really took place. With all the gears moving at this point and the big tournament coming up, will Konami continue this push, or will they ease into the coming months?